Hi, everybody, and welcome to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. And I'm just curious, are we building the 21st century welfare state? Or I don't know, looks like there's a lot of points a lot of things we can cross reference here. We'll see. A lot more to come. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Black Spring with Autumn on this Echo. I'm calling it an Echo Sunday. And we're going to get into a few things. We're going to revisit a few things. And of course, if you would like to tag in, you will have an opportunity to do so. But first, I would like to say a warm thank you and hello to our patrons, subscribers, and of course, the viewers like you. I will be right back. This show is brought to you in part by our sponsors. Whether you're interested in health, culture, politics, scripture, automobiles, or music, please check out Derek C. Williams, Killer Whale Channels, The Definition of Anarchy, Marcy T., Joseph Francis Burton, Paralysis by Analysis, Chrysler Imperial H, Little Miss Goth, AZ Infidel, Cold War Jesus, Anthony Scioli, and Let the Truth Be Told. We'll be right back right after this. All right. Once again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I want to say hello to Anarchy Television. Thank you, Anarchy Television, for tuning in on your Sunday, and welcome in. Welcome in to our Echo Sunday. All right. Thank you so much. And hello to Joseph Francis Burton. He is cooking menudo for breakfast, but you can listen in. Welcome in. All right, guys. So I'm going to tell you, I picked up another point of interest, and we talked about it just briefly. I didn't get back to you guys yesterday. I do apologize for that. However, I do have a couple of things in headlines, but I also kind of want to cross-reference what I think is a part of what I find to be, dare I say, like a nouveau progressive venture when it comes to this part of this reconciliation bill, when we talk about the $150 billion investment that they're doing on affordable housing. Now, the thing about affordable housing, that has had a bit of a dark and nasty history for a while. And we're actually going to revisit New York. And I'm just curious, like, what kind of qualifications would what a 21st century these sprawls of affordable housing that's going to be up. And of course, I have an article. I'm lucky enough to have an article that I can cross-reference for you in the liners from The Hill. And of course, they mention their target groups in language of Black and brown people per usual. And you have your usual suspects, Maxine Waters and somebody else. That's basically, there's no secret that Maxine Waters is all about affordable housing. And she's done such a great job, in LA. And it never stops. How many decades will people have to endure this kind of, what dare I call it, tyranny, or this kind of social engineering? I'm going to say social engineering is my new term. All right. They put people in a position, the sheeple in a position to believe that they are there for them and they care for them. Oh, we care about you, and we're gonna tear down your old housing, and guess what we're gonna do? We're gonna build you more affordable housing, and the crowd goes wild. So is that what we're on tap for? I guess we'll have a look at. We'll see what I think in the previous administration, was it Ben Carson he was over, was it HUD, or not HUD, but the urban housing development. We're going to go into that liner. And of course, I want to talk about I think we have our mocktail missionary and HRC, and that's Hillary Clinton, which it just seems like have all of the people in the United States, have all the former heads of state or state, dare I say, dignitaries taking a trip to Europe this weekend. I mean, what's going on? It just seems like we're just dealing with that nobody's really running anything. It's just a group. We have a group of people that have their hands on the globe right now. And yeah, that's what we're doing. So we have that. We have HRC, who took a trip to the UK. We also want to get into this bill, in which, not so much into the bill, but just some of the, dare I say, some of the nuance, or some of the pitfalls of the Biden framework that includes $150 billion for affordable housing. Now, you better believe that I'm under the impression that that's not going to come without some level of segregation. We are very much, there will be some serious segregation going on there. And I would love to see, I'm going to show you a 1930s form. I'm going to show you a 1930s form on what questions you were asked if you were interested. And also let you know even back then, of course, in New York City, the race relations were pretty, pretty egregious. But then the housing in America has its own history. But I think this is going to usher in a new history. It's going to usher in a new segregation, and they're going to put it under the auspices of, for the common good, or for the common man, because we're so unsophisticated and all. And so I'll tell you about that. And then we might even get into the ghost story that I wanted to get into yesterday, with the AI having discovered a relative or some type of ancestor. We'll get into that. That's a little bit creepy, a little bit spooky. So it's still, the spooks are still out there for the weekend. And I'm not necessarily saying it's tied to, of course, Halloween. This is not a Halloween celebration, but getting spooked. And then this is unnerving. A lot of these things are, but we'll get into them. So let's get going, shall we? Hope you guys are doing well out there. we're going to go ahead and start with our liner from the Hill. And I'd love to have you guys chime in. So we'll kind of take this. I'm going to go ahead and put the link. I'm going to finish this one, and then I'll put the link out for you. And then, not to forget, we are planning what I'm referring to as the Preppers Potluck. So if you're interested in the Preppers Potluck, we are interested. I am taking calls. I'm taking calls for first aid for the Preppers Potluck. If you have remedies for any of these things, whether it's first aid, whether it's sanitary things, what did we talk about? We talked about hand sanitizer. We talked about natural antiseptics yesterday. We talked about where you might find these items. We talked about what the common colds, I guess immune boosters, even you exercise hacks or you fitness hacks out there, you ruckers, shout out to TDOA, and you push-up master, challenge master Joseph Francis Burton. So anything you guys want to contribute in terms of just building strength, of course, we're not getting those kinds of recommendations there. Everybody's so worried about, they're so worried and concerned about, the public health, but we have heard no campaigns like water. I talked about, like a natural springs map that I would try to provide for the preppers potluck. So whatever you want to contribute to it, whether I mean, of course, we all have, or we've had if we were lucky enough to have grandparents in our lives, or however long we had them, we were blessed to have them. Of course, you always heard stories of remedies that included things like iodine, castor oil, turpentine, any of that. If you have any of that, you're welcome to bring those ideas and those remedies to our preppers potluck. So if you're interested in that, if you want to present something specifically, I'm going to be providing, if you email me, I'll provide you specifics on how you can get involved and how you can present. You'll be able to present, you'll be able to present your remedy at the potluck. So bring whatever you want. So, and what we're looking for is not so much, of course, we have conveniences, modern day conveniences, but we want to be able to provide things, use things that would be transitory, or things that could be multifunctional, like multi-use, dare I say. Like I mentioned witch hazel. I mentioned even different types of vinegar, agents that can be cleaning agents, whether it's like wound cleaning agents, or just general, some general sanitary kinds of things. So we're doing just whatever you want to bring. If you have a way of preserving any specific food item, or something like that, or say, I don't know, maybe you use coffee beans maybe you put coffee beans somewhere to neutralize things, whatever you want to contribute is absolutely fine. So that's what we're going to be looking for on the preppers potluck. So if you are looking to participate in that, we'll be happy to have you, but please send me an email so I can tell you how it's going to work and how you can present. And and we'll also pick a day on that. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Sorry about that. And also, there's another liner I'm going to get into. I do think there's been some changes under the FCC, which I do believe that's the Federal Communications Commission. So I think that's going to be possibly a game changer, but definitely one to watch. So it's kind of like we're watching a lot of things right now. We are. So without further yak, I will go on to the liner. Thanks so much for tuning in. So if you can't see this, or if there's an issue, let me know. So we're starting out with our liner, our headlines from the Hill, and that's the Biden framework includes $150 billion for affordable housing. So we're going to go there, and then I'm going to, I would like to take this a step further, and I'd like to kind of contrast this with some of the apartment, the mass or the large sprawl of apartment buildings from the 1930s, and what those quals look like, how you could qualify. Will you qualify, or what do you guys think those quals will look like to this century? What do you think those quals will look like? Okay, so we'll go ahead and start right now. Thank you so much for tuning in. All right, so here we have from the Hill in our headlines, a Biden framework includes $150 billion for affordable housing. Okay, we've got our usual suspects to cheer it on. We'll get into that. All right, here we are. According to this, President Biden's proposed climate change and social services bill is expected to include $150 billion for affordable housing creation and financial assistance, elating supporters who feared it would be cut from Democrats' package. The White House on Thursday released a new framework for Biden's, quote, Build Back Better Act, end quote, a roughly $1.75 trillion budget reconciliation package that included billions of dollars meant to put 1 million affordable homes on the market and help thousands of Americans find stable housing. The housing component was cut down significantly from the $327 billion Democrats initially sought. Even so, the bill would still spend more than 3 times the current budget of the Department of Housing and Urban Development. in which housing advocates call an unprecedented step toward tackling an affordability crisis. Quote, this would be the most significant single investment in quality, stable, affordable homes for the country's lowest income people in history, end quote, said Diane Yantel, president and CEO of National Low Income Housing Coalition, in a Thursday statement. The framework includes $65 billion towards repairing and replacing public housing, $25 billion towards rental assistance, and $15 billion for the Housing Trust Fund, which provides grants to states for the construction and repair of affordable housing. The framework also allocates billions of dollars for improving the sustainability and climate resilience of housing, vouchers and support for elderly and disabled individuals, and grants for state and local governments to replace restrictive zoning laws. Quote, we are one step closer to achieving historic housing investments and keeping the country's lowest income people affordably housed. But we're not done yet, end quote, Yantel said. The text of the bill is likely to change as Democrats haggle over a slew of other programs, including paid family leave, drug pricing measures, and a state and local tax cap repeal. Left out of the Thursday framework, the bill needs the support of all but 3 House Democrats and every Senate Democrat to pass through budget reconciliation over unanimous GOP opposition, which will almost certainly require further changes. While future cuts are possible, the framework's inclusion of a major housing investment marked a significant win for housing advocates and Democrats who fought to preserve it. Quote, I can't recall such an all-encompassing package at such high numbers, end quote, said Lisa Petto, principal at lobbying firm Mindset and former chief counsel to Housing Financial Services Committee Chairwoman Maxine Waters. Waters, Senate Banking Committee Chairman Sherrod Brown, and dozens of Democrats on the panels rallied to protect housing funds this month as party leaders consider tough cuts. Both have pushed for years to bolster support for affordable housing and blasted lawmakers in both parties who brushed the issue aside. Quote, we cannot build back better without investing in our nation's crumbling housing infrastructure. Housing is not a miscellaneous afterthought, a nice to have, a something that can wait until later, end quote, Waters said at a hearing last week. Quote, housing is foundational and America has waited long enough, end quote, she continued. Housing prices and rents had risen steadily for years before the pandemic as the supply of affordable homes failed to keep up with population growth, gentrification, and rising income inequality. The emergence of the CV-19 pandemic deepened the affordable housing crisis by plunging millions of Americans into financial precarity, exacerbated housing backlogs, and poured fuel on housing demand. Petto attributed the breakthrough on housing to a, quote, sea change, end quote, in leadership in both Congress and the White House. While she warned the package was not set in stone, Petto said the proposal marked a significant step forward for a years-long push to cement affordable housing as a crucial part of infrastructure. Quote, the reality is that the areas of most need are Black and brown communities. And the hard truth is that not everybody wants to stand up for those communities, end quote, Petto said. Quote, it's a focus now, and it's not an afterthought. Okay, so there you got. That's what you're to me, there's not a lot of meat in there, but we've seen how if you've been, I don't know if it's probably not PC. You've seen housing projects before all over the country. Some of the largest housing projects I've seen are in New York City. And the thing about it, the history of housing, those particular large housing, sprawling housing projects, they really were not, it was more for, I think, working, dare I say, white middle class, or for, this was a point of, I guess, the segregation or housing segregation. So I want to cross-reference that just a little bit here for you so you can see the types of I'm curious as to what that plan is going to look like. If it's to come true, what type of qualifications would be required for that type of government? That's like they're turning it into a government industry. So what can come out of that? And that's why I'm going to put this link out here for you guys. I'm going to show you. Will the mocktail be a criteria for it? If so, how many? 1, 2, 3. How many scoops? How many bee stings? How many? Okay, so we're going to switch over to that. Hang on just a second. I'm putting your link out there. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. Let me go ahead and thanks so much. I'm going to go ahead and share something with you. I mean, the whole line of this, I talked about, it kind of opened up with, are we building a new welfare state, or what exactly are we changing? Are we changing the transferring power from the people or for our industry? We're changing the labor. We're transferring the labor over to the government. It looks like that's what it looks like this is the road that we're going down. So I kind of want to share with you, just cross-reference something here. All right. And this actually is going to come out of the New York Times, the rise and fall of New York public housing and oral history. So to me, I think there's lessons to be learned here. And do I think they're going to observe any of those lessons? No, of course not. Because the elite, they're never wrong, right? The progressives they're never wrong. They always have to go, they're going backwards, right? So I'm going to zoom in on this. And I did put the link out there for you guys. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on this right now. All right. So what you see before you this is our cross-reference on this $150 billion housing investment, the sprawling housing. So this is the New York Times, from the New York Times, the rise and fall of New York's public housing and oral history. So I'm saying we've got lessons to be learned here, So here you can see this was Harlem River Houses, which was one of the first federally financed public housing developments in the country. Okay. So you see how that worked. We're going to go into that so you can see how well that worked out. Okay. So according to this, no heat, leaking roofs, mold and pests, interminable waits for basic repairs. The public housing in New York City has become synonymous with the dilapidated living conditions many of its more than 400,000 residents have endured in recent years. But it wasn't always like this in the 325 housing projects owned and managed by the New York City Housing Authority, also known as NYCHA. The country's largest public housing system was once a seemingly reliable option for the working poor, right? Is that who they're trying to reach right now? The working Black and brown poor? Is that what they're doing? NYCHA successfully endured some of New York City's most turbulent eras, while other public housing buildings across the country came tumbling down. Now, this is like a 20th century article here, so just ride with me for a second here. Now, NYCHA is at a crossroads. As part of a settlement in June in which NYCHA admitted to covering up its actions in lying to the federal government, a court-appointed monitor will soon oversee the beleaguered agency as it tries to come up with billions of dollars to keep thousands of its aging buildings habitable for decades to come. So here's, to me, this is lesson one. To me, this is going to be what is sustainable about this not just the social effects, the social effects of this kind of a thing, but the maintaining this kind of a sprawl and the types of people that you're going to say you're building this for. And we're going to talk about, I would imagine they're not going to put a whole lot of windows, because it's also going to be built. It's going to be, the criteria, I think, for these buildings is probably going to have something to do with climate change. So hang on just one second. So we'll get right back into this one. And then I'm going to show you a form. I'm going to show you the criteria for 20th century, the large sprawls, as I figure sometimes people use like first, largest, biggest something in history, which to me, I don't know why people assume that's a good thing. The first something, the largest something. But if New York didn't pull this off very well, I seriously doubt that the federal government's $150 billion investment is going to bode well and be sustainable and non-discriminatory in the 21st century. Okay, so I'm going to keep going here. Okay, to understand how NYCHA arrived at this point, we combed through our photo archives for forgotten images, and spoke to longtime residents, former housing officials, historians, and others about the housing authority's often overlooked and surprising 8-decade history. That story, in their own words, is below. So here you go. This is, you got some photos here. Lower Manhattan tenements were cleared in 1934 to make way for Knickerbocker Village, a private development of low-income housing that was federally funded. You can see that. When the government fails, usually somebody else comes in, and a private company or a development company comes in and picks up where they've overlooked and slacked off. All right, and here you go. Historically, here you have Mayor Fiorello H. LaGuardia speaking at the dedication of the Harlem River houses in 1937. So here's your 20th century dedication. The development had 577 apartments. So there's lessons to be learned from New York, I would imagine. And I don't think they're going to learn anything. Okay, so here again, 1934, 1968, a progressive housing solution to fix New York City. So what are they trying to fix right now? The progressives are some of the same school of thought. Progressives are trying to help everybody with the inequality and the equity disparities, not the equity disparities, but the gaps in housing affordability. Okay, so NYCHA was founded in 1934 as Mayor Fiorello H. LaGuardia's antidote to the shoddy tenements of New York City's housing crisis during the Great Depression. The public housing was trumpeted as the duty of progressive government, and the swift construction of sprawling complexes became a slum clearing machine that reshaped the city's urban landscape. Okay, so here you go. We're going to get into the quals right now, but NYCHA developments were not poor houses. Unlike other cities, New York effectively barred lower income. Here's your segregation for a place like New York. Unlike other cities, or here's your distinction. Unlike other cities, New York effectively barred lower income residents from public housing. From 1953 to 1968, it excluded most residents on welfare by screening applicants using a list of moral factors. Hello, is anybody home? What do you think the moral factor will be? Moral factor for 200 folks on Sunday. What's the moral factor right now? It's mocktail, right? I think that's going to be a part of this. What do you guys think? You got your moral factor. The moral factor of the 21st century. Okay. So that's on the list for you. So they're screening you based on moral factors, including alcoholism, irregular work history, single motherhood, and lack of furniture. Woohoo! All right. So let's go ahead. You see right here, you have a photo, some imagery here. Applicants lined up at the Housing Authority office in 1947, by which time NYCHA had constructed 15 housing developments. Okay. Most of those were in Manhattan. So let me show you. New York City Housing Authority, registration of families and persons in need of housing. You got people in need of housing right now because I guess they're showing they're morally corrupt because they didn't do the mocktail. So you got people right now that have already been turned down from shelters that I'm hearing, even into Baltimore area, probably I'm sure in New York as well. Let me see if I can zoom this in for you guys. How are you guys doing out there? Let me know if you cannot see this, but I want to zoom in on this. Because yes, your moral factors are going to come up if they do put this $150 billion into affordable housing with their sprawling, apartments and whatnot. So according to this is registration of families and persons in need of housing. This registration is being conducted by the City of New York for the purpose of determining the extent of housing shortage, The city will take positive steps to provide housing on the basis of the facts gathered in this registration. All families, as well as single persons who have been able to find permanent housing quarters, are requested to fill out the following registration form. Only one registration form should be filled out for each family member. Do not file this form if another member of your family has already done so. So here you got, of course, your name and address. They want to know, one, where are you living now? I bet your relationship is also going to be a part of this one as well. Okay. To me, this is going to be also probably a part of a study for this new affordable housing project that they're coming up with. Where are you living now? And they show you hotel, furnished room, rooming house. 3, own an apartment. 4, sharing apartment with others, with parents or in-laws, sharing apartment with other parents or in-laws. 2, how many rooms do you have now? Why do you need other housing quarters? 5, where do you live? Where did you live before the war? So I'm wondering if are they going to put, where did you live before the pandemic? Do you guys think that's going to be a part of the questionnaire on this one? You're going to have your mocktail as your moral factor. You're going to they want to know where you were before, I guess, dare we say March 2020? Yeah, so we'll keep going here. All right, so how long do you plan to remain in New York City? Number 7, what is the size of your family? Count only those persons who must live with you. Okay, here we go. We're getting into some real deals. Persons, including myself. 8, the questions 8 through 13, give the age and sex of all members of your family. 14, are you or is a member of your family, 1, a veteran, 2, still military service? And 15, do you have your own furniture or do you need a furnished apartment? So I can see this is going to deviate dramatically. I think of course, there's going to be similarities, but I do think that the moral factors will be there. And I think that number 1 moral factor, you guys can chime in at any time. We're basically taking a poll. What do you think the moral factor will be for this housing infrastructure bill if it goes through? You don't think they're going to take applications? You think they're going to just have, everybody piling in? And I have no idea. And I'd love to know what it looks like. I'd love to know what that application looks like, and where are they coming up with the criteria? Are they going to do what they've done in the past? See, to me, this also reminds me of the 60s, where, of course, you had, the Cloward-Piven strategy. They've already enacted this thing. But are they going to ask people, are they going to kick the men out of the house as well? What methodologies? This is a methodology in itself. And how soon would I would imagine something like this would go out very soon, so that they probably already have a commission. And what is it? Waters is probably on it. This woman, Pedo, Waters is probably on it. They're probably going to, anything that's disruptive. If you're single with a bunch of kids, you're probably going to be able to you're probably going to get in there pretty easily. I have no idea. Will they keep that standard? I think chances are pretty good that they will, that that standard will remain the same, or that I think this questionnaire, of course, will be longer. This was New York City, even though New York City has historically had the largest, I think the largest number of housing sprawl or apartments, affordable housing before, but this is going to be federal. I don't know how it's going to be managed. Each state will probably do something different, but I do think that the baseline requirements will be the same. So this is a 20, probably an early 20th century application that you're looking for. But we'll keep an eye on this. I'd love to know what you guys think, as per usual, and I do have the link out there for you. So we're going to take a quick little break here, and we're going to switch gears, and then we're going to go to our missionary mocktail. It's a global missionary mocktail. We're going to go to that. So we're going to take a quick little break, and I will be right back right after this. Thank you guys so much. All right, thank you so much for tuning in. So what we're going to move over to our next liner. If you're just joining us, we have covered a little bit from our headlines. We've talked about the $150 billion investment that's in the proposed reconciliation bill. We've talked about $150 billion affordable housing, and we're doing a little bit of contrast, and we're trying to show there's got to be some lessons learned from New York. What you see before you is an application from that time. You'll be morally gut checked. And I posed the question to our chat. What do you think the moral factor will be this time? Do you think it'll be mocktails? Do you think they will be advocating for unity and men and women cohabitating in these places? We can learn lessons from, the sprawling of New York sprawl and which they were not successful. They've not been successful with mass or large sprawls of complexes. And they're targeting, once again, they've got usual suspects, cheerleader Maxine Waters and Miss Pedo, who's actually advocating for, hello, the House of Madness. How are you? Thank you so much for tuning in. Nice to see you. So we'll see what's going on there. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch gears right now. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. So now we're on to our mocktail missionary. She's global. She's her work is never done. Like some of these people just keep showing up. I don't think this whole mocktail thing is going away, guys. I really don't. And I'm going to paraphrase. Who was it? The governor of Alabama, was it George Wallace, the late George Wallace? What did he say? Segregation today, segregation now, segregation today, segregation forever. I think it's going to be something like that. This mocktails today, mocktails now, mocktails today, mocktails forever. That's where I think that we're going with this. So with that said, let's go ahead and see what our mocktail missionary has been up to. All right. According to this, Hillary Clinton urges UK to mandate mocktails right now. Okay. So according to this, Hillary Clinton has urged UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson to implement the CV mocktail mandates. Okay, the former Secretary of State made the remarks during an appearance on the BBC's The Andrew Marr Show on Sunday to discuss State of Terror, the political thriller she co-wrote with author Louise Penny. Clinton told Marr it's, quote, imperative, end quote, Johnson takes action to combat rising CV infections in the UK. Quote, I don't think it's imperative that the Prime Minister do what he can to, I do think it's imperative that the Prime Minister do what he can to stop the rise of the CV in the UK, end quote. Clinton said, quote, he doesn't need to shut the society down, but he does need to mandate mocktails, end quote. Clinton said she supported the implementation of, quote, mocktail passports, end quote, to access indoor venues. But she added that mandates requiring workers to be mocktailed or lose their jobs were also needed. You dig that? Quote, part of what we've done in New York, for example, is all of the big health systems, hospitals, and the like, they've mandated mocktails, end quote, Clinton said. Quote, for example, one very large one, 77,000 employees, 1,000 refused to get mocktailed. They were fired. So she's basically saying what? Is she showing that that's the light, that New York has the light and that's what the world should be following, what New York has done? I'm just saying. Or will she do what Hochul, the governor of New York, will she ask those people to be her apostles and go out and tell people? She added, quote, I think you've got to make it clear that we're not going back to lockdown. That's not going to happen. But if you don't get mocktailed, and if you don't have proof of mocktail when you go into a club or restaurant, and employers don't enforce mocktails, we may see problems here in the UK as the weather gets colder and people are forced back inside again, end quote. Scientists have recently urged the UK governments to bring back strict CV restrictions to combat a surge in the CV infections. The UK government has encouraged millions of residents to get booster shots, but Health Secretary Sajid Javid said it wasn't necessary to implement Plan B rules, which include mandatory face flags in some settings and so-called CV passports. In an appearance on the BBC Breakfast, Javid also said he would support plans to make it mandatory for healthcare workers to be fully mocktailed. Javid told Sky News he was, quote, leaning towards making the mocktail mandatory for roughly 100,000 National Health Service staff who are yet to get their first sting. Quote, it's not only right for someone working in the NHS because naturally they're more likely to come in contact with CV, but also for those they're caring for, those who are vulnerable in hospital, end quote. He said on the BBC Breakfast. A spokesperson for the UK's Department of Health and Social Care said all home care workers and anyone entering a care home will need to be mocktailed, fully mocktailed by November 11th. Quote, we have taken action to introduce mocktail requirements in care homes, and we have consulted on extending this further across health and other social care services, end quote, the spokesperson told Newsweek. Quote, mocktails are safe and effective, and just under 80% of the UK population have already had both stings to protect themselves against the CV-19. As winter approaches, we urge anyone who is eligible to get their sting now, end quote. In the US, President Joe Biden has mandated that federal contractors and all businesses with more than 100 employees require workers to be fully mocktailed against CV. The conflict over mocktail mandates has been growing, with staff from all types of occupations, including healthcare workers, police officers, firefighters, and educators, refusing to get the sting. Update at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on 10/25. This article had been updated with a comment from the Department of Health and Social Care. Okay. So, we'll see. We'll see how many, we'll see what else, where she goes next, right? Right? All right. I thank you guys so much for tuning in on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. That is 2 out of the 3 of our liners for today. And I'm going to take a quick little break, and I will be right back. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And the House of Madness, thank you so much for coming in. I'll be right back. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to go to our final line on this morning. Thank you guys so much. Which I guess I kind of want to just do an announcement on that. Of course, we have the Biden administration nominates the FCC chair, a new commissioner, to give Democrats majority. But I will not delay in my original promises that I would show you the ancestry, the AI findings So we'll go to that. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And, I don't really advocate a whole lot for hitting the like button because I'm not really sure if it helps. But, if you guys want to do that, that helps a lot. Thank you very much. So we're going to go on to the artificial intelligence has found an unknown ghost ancestor in the human genome. All right, let me know if you have any issues seeing this. Okay. And this liner comes out of sciencealert.com. Artificial intelligence has found an unknown ghost ancestor in the human genome. Nobody knows who she was, just that she was different, a teenage girl from over 50,000 years ago. Of such strange uniqueness, she looked to be a, quote, hybrid, end quote, ancestor to modern humans that scientists had never seen before. Only recently, researchers have uncovered evidence she wasn't alone. In a 2019 study analyzing the complex mess of humanity's prehistory, scientists used artificial intelligence to identify an unknown human ancestor species that modern humans encountered and shared alliances with on the long trek out of Africa millennia ago. Quote, about 80,000 years ago, the so-called out of Africa occurred when part of the human population, which already consisted of modern humans, abandoned the African continent and migrated to other continents, giving rise to all the current populations, explained evolutionary biologist Jean-Bertrand Petit from the University of Pompeu Fabra in Spain. As modern humans forged this path into the landmass of Eurasia, they forged some other things too, breeding with ancient and extinct hominids from other species. Up until recently, these occasional sexual partners were thought to include Neanderthals and Denisovans, the latter of which were unknown until 2010. But in this study, a third X from long ago was isolated in Eurasian DNA, thanks to the deep learning algorithms sifting through a complex mass of ancient and modern human genetic code. Using a statistical technique called Bayesian inference, the researchers found evidence of what they call a, quote, third introgression, end quote, a ghost archaic population that modern humans interbred with during the African exodus. Quote, this population is either related to the Neanderthal, Denisova clade, or diverged early from the Denisova lineage, end quote. The researchers wrote in their paper, meaning that it's possible this third population in humanity's sexual history was possibly a mix themselves of Neanderthals and Denisovans. In a sense, from the vantage point of deep learning, it is hypothetical corroboration of sorts. It's a hypothetical corroboration of sorts of the teenage girl, quote, hybrid fossil, end quote, identified in 2018. Although there's still more work to be done and the research project themselves aren't directly linked, quote, our theory coincides with the hybrid specimen discovered recently in Denisova, although as yet we cannot rule out other possibilities, end quote. One of the team, gemosist Maya Mondal from the University of Tartu in Estonia, said in a press statement at the time of discovery. That being said, the discoveries being made in this area of science are coming thick and fast. Also in 2018, another team of researchers identified evidence of that they called, quote, definite third interbreeding event, end quote, along Denisovans and Neanderthals. And a pair of papers published in early 2019 trace a timeline of how those extinct species intersected and interbred in clearer detail than ever before. This is a decidedly new technique in the field of human ancestry, and the known fossil evidence we're dealing with is amazingly scant. But according to the research, what the team has found explains not only a long forgotten process of introgression, it's a dalliance that in its own way informs part of who we are today. Quote, we thought we'd try to find these places of high divergence in the genome, see which are Neanderthal and which are Denisovan, and then see whether these explain the whole picture, end quote. Bertrand Petit told Smithsonian. Quote, as it happens, if you subtract Neanderthal and Denisovan parts, there is still something in the genome that is highly divergent. The findings were published in Nature Communications. Okay, so if you guys are into, dare I say, anthropology or AI's brilliance, AI is out of control, right? Who knows? Who knows what AI will find next? And hello to Amber _25J. It's nice to see you. It's nice to see you. And Nick Smith, how are you? All right, I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn on our Eco Sunday. And I'm going to take a quick break and come back and say salute to everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I'll be back shortly. Thank you guys so much. So just a quick recap here, what we've gone into today. We've talked about the reconciliation bill's allotment for the $150 billion investment in a sprawl of affordable housing targeting, you guessed it, Black and brown people. And you have the usual suspects cheering it on, Maxine Waters and not sure Peto's first name, but yes, they're both cheering it on, saying it's long overdue. Okay, so and then we also kind of cross-referenced, some of the nation's largest housing projects from the past, which, e.g., New York, and how successful that was. So we thought, they can learn lessons, right? Did they learn anything from that? The amount of neglect, the amount of discrimination that the moral screening would require. And I ask you guys, what do you think the moral factor will be this time? Will it be alcohol? Will it be cohabitating with males, destroying, families even further? They're doing a pretty good job with that already with their BLM and their original objective to destroy the nuclear family. So, we'll see what happens with that. And then we had a closer look at former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, which kind of donned her the mocktail missionary. She's gone global with the campaign on and in promoting it in the UK, saying that should happen. Yes. So, and see how well that, and she also cited New York and how well, and just how well that's working out for them and how just that is, right? And you've got firefighters working, being laid off, police. So that's going to make the city safer, right? But I tell you what, it's going to overwork people that are, you're going to be at the whim if you have already gone through with this thing. So you're going to get overworked. So we looked at that. We also questioned, would she ask those people to be apostles as well and go out and spread the news on mocktail importance and the mandates. And finally, we went into our last segment was on AI and AI's finding of a, dare I say, of an ancestral entity, science entity that they're exploring. So I don't think that they're done with that. But they're saying that AI is doing such a riveting job on, defining humanity. I mean, how long before we're obsolete? At this point, I don't know. We've talked about this quite a bit, but I just want to give 2 reminder pieces. We are going to have a Preppers Potluck, and in that Preppers Potluck, I've said earlier, we're looking for first aid remedies. We're looking for health remedies. Anything you want to contribute. We're looking for, dare I say, food preservation, sanitizer, and natural antiseptics. Cold and flu remedies. We talked about iodine. We've talked about the castor oil stories. We've talked about the turpentine. We've talked about all the remedies of generations, whether from grandparents or parents. And so we've gotten into quite a bit this weekend overall. I thank you guys so much for joining me on the Black Spring Mobile, which that's always interesting. And the turnout is always interesting as well. So I thank you guys so much for tuning in. And also, I'm going to work on try to get that out before the end of the day. The Discord handles for you and what you need to know. So yeah. And then I may try something else. I may do like a call-in pilot or something like that, where you of course won't have to show your face. You can just call in. All right. Thank you guys so much. I want to say salute to everybody that joined us today at Anarchy Television. Thank you so much, Anarchy Television, as well as Joseph Francis Burton. Thank you so much for coming in and supporting us the way that you do. Keep inspiring us. Same thing for Anarchy Television. Let me read this comment from earlier. He said, the radio conditions are hopping right now. I'm talking to Europe all the way over here in Florida. It's awesome. I love it when it's like this. Very nice. I look forward to hearing your work, hearing more from you and what your findings are, because you do such a great job with that, Anarchy. Thank you so much. And who else do we have? The House of Madness. Thank you so much for tuning in. I never got a response. What do you guys think that the moral factor is? What would the moral factor be in the 21st century as opposed to the moral factors in the early 20th century, the 1930s? Like I think New York, it's a huge place. But to me, I think they can learn lessons there. Will it be alcoholism, or what do you think it'll be? Like, are you smoking weed? Do you smoke weed? Any of that? Let me know. You can always send me an email. Thank you, Nick Smith, for tuning in, as well as Amber _25J. And thank you for all my friends over on Twitch for supporting us today. All right. And Joseph Francis Burton, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you guys again. The next live stream in the comment section, Moonlight Stream on the video. And I look forward to hearing you guys' input for seeing who's interested in the Preppers Potluck. So if you're interested in the Preppers Potluck, please send an email to blackspringwithautumn@gmail.com. Let me know what you'd like to present, and we'll set you guys up. We may have to do, depending on your response, we'll see the interest level. Maybe I'll put a poll out today and see what the interest level is. If it's big enough, then maybe we'll have to do a part 2. We'll see. But I think you guys always are always great at self-preservation. And I think that's more than valuable in these times. All right, guys, have a great rest of your Sunday. And take care.